Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katrina Boyer. I'm the Investor Education Coordinator for the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. And if you don't know what we do, we are the regulator for the financial industry here in Pennsylvania. So we have about 150 state chartered banks and credit unions. We also license mortgage lenders, check cashers, pawn shops, car dealerships, and those types of non-bank lenders. And we have more than 200,000 investment professionals who are registered with the Commonwealth. My job is to educate folks on how to protect the assets that they have and to grow them if that's what they're working to do. Today, we're talking about avoiding identity theft. And the truth is that the police can't protect us. People have to be more aware and they have to be educated about identity theft. And Frank Abagnale says we live in a time when if you make it easy for someone to steal from you, someone will. And I think that is a really good mantra to keep in mind as we think about identity theft. So, identity theft happens when someone uses your personal information, your name, your social security number, maybe a credit card number, or even a cell phone without your permission to commit a fraud or other type of crime. And if we were in person, I would ask you all to raise your hands if you've ever been a victim of identity theft. And maybe that looks like the letter that you got in the mail telling you that your information was compromised. And then suddenly you're seeing unauthorized transactions on your credit or debit cards. Or you pull your credit report and you find that someone has opened a credit account in your name that you did not authorize. Those are all forms of identity theft that we don't necessarily take the time to recognize is an issue. But listen, in 2024, look at the number of identity thefts that were reported to the Federal Trade Commission. More than 1 million reports of identity theft. That's not scams. That's just someone having their identity stolen. Whether someone opened a new credit card, someone used an existing account. We don't think about it very often, but sometimes someone will take out a car lease a car in our name. I met a woman one time who said, Katrina, my sister stole my identity and she bought a house. And sadly, these are not stories that are all that uncommon. So today we're going to talk about what identity theft is and how it can happen. We're going to talk about protecting yourself and what to do if you become a victim, because I'm a firm believer that if it's not a matter of if, it really is a matter of when. Because the reality is our information is out there. And I want to start with sort of in situations where it might be close to home. So maybe you've got family members who might steal your identity. Young people are famous for having their identity stolen because they don't have credit, so it's easy to open it. But what about coworkers and friends or roommates? Anybody who can access our personal information can steal our identities. So, a family member who can access our personal information can do that. Perpetrators will take advantage of a relationship that they will create to create that sense of you can trust me, so you're less likely to protect your personal information. Another type of identity theft that I like to talk about is the opportunist identity theft. So maybe you're putting your bills out in the mailbox with that little red flag up, or maybe you're taking your mail to the blue box on the corner. Criminals know what we send in the mail, whether that's cash, credit card payments. It's got our statement on there. That information is a gold mine for an opportunist. They may even go through our garbage. They will go through the trash to get enough information to steal our identities. Or maybe we're just not quite paying close enough attention and our wallet or purse are stolen. And finally, it's one that we don't necessarily protect ourselves from as well as we could, but that is skimming devices. So a skimming device captures the information off of the black magnetic strip on our debit or credit cards. And then the criminal downloads that information and is able to shop using our credit or debit. So that's important for us to remember. Criminals literally will drive through neighborhoods to see those red flags to make sure that, so that they can get the information out of our mailbox. They jump into the dumpsters that we put our garbage in, and they stick those skimming devices on ATM machines. They can be found on gas pumps and even point of sale devices where you put your card in to pay your bill at the grocery store. Believe it or not, they sell devices that fit right over the top of that. So you wouldn't necessarily recognize it. And when you put your card in, it captures it first to the criminal, and then the store gets that capture. One way to prevent that is to tap instead of sliding your card in. By tapping, you're preventing that skimming device from capturing the information on the black magnetic strip. Someday they may get rid of the black magnetic strips, but until then, we have to be really careful about skimming devices on all different types of machines. So I want to talk about cyber criminals. Smishing, phishing, vishing. Phishing is the newest one. It's a little bit of a scary time, if I'm being honest. So you may get a pop-up that says your computer is infected. If you click on that link, you're very probably going to download malware that is going to infect your computer. It may record all of your keystrokes. It may go in and download a virus so that you won't be able to access your computer. If you get that pop-up, it's a really good idea just to sever the connection of the internet. If you're on a laptop, just do a hard shut off. If you are using wired internet, unplug the internet from your computer, and that is going to go away. So you might get a malicious link in an email. It's really important that we look at the actual email address that it's coming from. And you can do that by using your cursor to hover over the email address. You can also do that on any links that may be in your email or that you may get texted. It's really important to recognize that we get just as many scam text messages, emails, and pop-ups as everybody else. So it's important that we recognize those types of potential frauds and scams that we can become a victim to by giving up our personal information. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the new threats that we need to be aware of, because artificial intelligence is on everybody's mind these days. And sadly, AI can create incredibly believable scenarios. If you search AI scams, you will find so many different situations where AI has been a part of it. I recently saw a scam where someone thought they were working with Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt was very sick and in the hospital, and that person sent something like $78,000 to a criminal who was impersonating Brad Pitt and using artificial intelligence to do it. There's a video out there, and I don't think it's in this slide deck, but there's a video out there that shows Morgan Freeman, and it's an incredibly believable video. But in the top corner, you see another guy who's saying the words, but mimics the exact way that Morgan Freeman moves his head and sounds exactly like him. He's one of the most, his voice is one of the most recognizable that I know, and it's hard to tell that it's artificial intelligence. So that's something that we really need to be aware of. Those are called deep fakes, where they create videos. And sadly, they can actually create deep fakes of people that we care about. So maybe you get an email or a voicemail that says, Grandma or Grandpa, I'm in trouble and I need your help. Using AI can create very believable situations where we might actually fall for it and give up our personal information. So I think it's important for us to recognize that we can set up passcodes for our loved ones and people that may call us sometimes. If they're calling and asking for money and they can't answer the question or give you the passcode, it's a strong possibility that you're not actually talking to who you think you are. So there's also a concept called synthetic identity theft, where AI takes some of your information and creates a whole new persona, probably a different name, but they have enough of your personal information where they can actually create a whole identity and open up lots of different credit cards and that kind of information. So it's really important that we are aware of that and we check into those things. Another new threat that we need to be aware of is social media exploitation. Most of us are involved in social media of some sort, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it is. Sadly, criminals will gather enough information about us from those social media platforms where they can create another version of your social media platform, and then they'll start to reach out to your friends and ask them for money, tell them that they're in trouble and you need money, or they need you to do something. So it's important to understand that social media is a great tool, but we also need to be aware that the information that we put out there, it can be found by criminals if we're not really careful to lock down our information. When I say lock down, what I mean is on social media, most apps allow you to choose who can see your information. If you leave it wide open, many people are going to see it and they're going to be able to gather that information. That's where the criminals come into play. But making sure that only your immediate contacts can see what's out there is a great way to protect that. And then you don't have to accept every friend request. You can decline it. Unless I truly know somebody, I never accept that friend request. So the next type of threat that I want to talk about is called biometric identity theft. And sadly, we all use our cell phones, and many of us will use a thumbprint or a facial recognition. We think that this is pretty safe, and I'm learning that data breaches can actually contain our face images or our thumbprints, and then criminals can actually use that information to steal your identity. Unfortunately, fingerprints and faces can't be changed. So, like we can change a passcode, we can change a password, we cannot change what we look like. And so I think that's something that we need to be aware of and use caution when you're allowing facial ID into certain apps or places. My doctor's office is, they took my picture when I first went in, and they compare my picture to me when I come in. Well, if that information gets out there, that can be used also. So we have to be aware of that. Another type of threat that I want to talk about is a quishing threat. So QR codes are great ways to pay bills when you go to the restaurant and they print the QR code on the receipt. QR codes are a great way to get more information about something, but we have to be really careful about the potential for someone to put a fake QR code over the top of another one. So I actually see a lot of times, because of my travel, where I have to pay to park, there's always a QR code and I can scan it and then it takes me to a website. The problem is if a criminal has taken and put a sticker over with a different QR code, it could take me to a malicious website. So we want to make sure that when we're scanning QR codes, we're careful about what situations we do that in, because we don't want to go to that malicious website. We don't want to go into a counterfeit website and put our personal information like our credit card or our social security number or any of that kind of personally identifying information. So again, we want to use technology in a way that is safe, and we have to be aware of all of these, artificial intelligence, pushing, biometric facial ID, all of those things. We have to be aware of that. So how can we protect our investments? I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about that. Bank robbers, when you ask a bank robber why they rob banks, they'll tell you because that's where the money is. But investment thieves know exactly how to get to us, and they'll do anything they can to steal our investments. So we have to be aware of that. So the Securities and Exchange Commission suggests that you monitor your investment accounts frequently. I always say check your account, check all of your accounts at least once a month, more often if you're comfortable doing that online. I use an app for everything, so I can check my accounts anytime. But we want to read those statements closely, and the Securities and Exchange Commission suggests that you change your passwords frequently. I know for the Commonwealth, I have to change my passwords every 3 months. I have to change the passcode on my phone like every 2 months. So that helps to ensure that if our passcode is leaked out, or God forbid you use the same password on all of your different accounts, if that information gets out there, criminals then have access to a whole bunch of your accounts, and you want to avoid that. Another thing that you can do is to turn on account alerts. I have some of my accounts set up that if a transaction happens in that account, I get a text message telling me that this amount was charged or this action took place on my account. That's a great way for me to know, oh yeah, I did authorize that transaction, or no, that's not my transaction and I need to report it. Another thing we can do is use multi-factor or two-step verification. And what that means is you put your password in and you start to log in, and then you get a text message with a code that you have to put in order to get into the account. You can set it up so that you get a phone call and you have to hit, 1 for yes. There are many different ways that we can set up that multi-factor authentication, but it's a great way for us to protect that personal information that's so vital to do. And then if you find unauthorized transactions or things that you don't recognize, it's really important that you speak up really quickly. So make sure that you report that to the institution or firm where that transaction has taken place. We always want to make sure that we investigate our investment professionals to make sure that they are registered and are competent to do what we want them to do. So you can go to brokercheck.finra.org and you can see there, it's a super simple website to use. You can type in the name of the professional that you're using and make sure that they're actually registered to do business in the Commonwealth. You can see how long they've been in business. You can see where they're registered, if they've had complaints filed against them or actions taken against them by Pennsylvania or another jurisdiction. And I mentioned that you can see if they've had complaints filed, but I always encourage people to make sure that they consider the actual complaint. So often it's a simple complaint where a customer was just disgruntled and they filed a complaint with the Department of Banking and Securities. Anytime someone files a complaint in a jurisdiction, whether it's Pennsylvania or anywhere else in the United States, that information is going to find its way to BrokerCheck. So read the complaint and make sure that you are okay with what's been filed, because it can be a simple misunderstanding. So I always encourage people, don't write off an investment professional who has a complaint or two until you actually consider the complaint. So how can we avoid becoming victims? Again, like I said, I believe it's a matter of when rather than if, but we can protect ourselves by making sure that we're guarding our social security number. We don't need those social security cards in our wallets. We don't need them laying around. They should be in a firebox, someplace safe where they can be locked up. Protect your personal documents, again, that social security number, in a safety deposit box or a fireproof safe in your home. But don't lose the key, because I'm really good at that, and then my husband has to break into it. Not a good sign. But what else can you do? We can be aware of interaction with people that we don't know. They might be seemingly trying to just start conversation, but we have to be aware that they may be fishing for information. Sometimes you may get a text message that out of the blue that says, hey, are we still on for dinner? And you don't know who that is. Sadly, if we are to start to engage with that person, they're going to try to continue the conversation. So rather than saying, hey, I think you have the wrong number, it's safe to delete and mark it as spam, because there's a thing called pig butchering, which is a fraud that happens that we need to be aware of. Pig butchering starts off with a pretty innocent conversation, like, hey, are we ready for dinner tonight? You respond, I don't know who you are. Well, they will come back and say, well, you sound really nice. Hope you have a great day. And then over the course of time, they build up this sense of trust, and they make us think that we're their friends. And then they start to talk about a crypto investment. So they'll say, I am on this, I do this crypto investing. This is a great opportunity for you. You don't want to miss out. Here's a link. Just deposit a few $100s and see how it grows. So you you go to the website, you create the login, you do that, all the things. And after a few weeks, your $500 is now worth $750 or $1,000. And they tell you, wow, this is really great. Your investment is growing. So you should take out some money and take a trip, go get a massage, do something fun with it. And we're able to get that money back. So it creates that sense of, well, this is legitimate. And then suddenly they tell you that this cryptocurrency is about to take off, and they encourage you to invest all of your money. I have an article here that I haven't had a chance to read yet, but the guy lost something like $700,000 to a pig butchering scam, because he was convinced that this cryptocurrency he got involved in was real. So we have to really be aware of those strange text messages or emails that we get, claiming, it's somebody who sent the wrong email address or texted the wrong person. Those are things that we really need to be aware of. So I've mentioned that we need to make sure that we monitor our account statements. Like I said, you can sign up to get a text message every time you have a transaction in your account. I have my phone set up that if I use my phone to pay, I get a text message telling me my transaction was approved. That way, if anything goes awry, I know that yes, this was my transaction, or no, it wasn't, and I need to reach out to my institution. So it's important to check our credit report. Unfortunately, identity theft in a victim's name, so a new account in a victim's name, is currently the number 3 form of identity theft. So checking our credit report is really important. And it used to be you could check your credit report once a year. You can now check your credit report once a week if that's what you choose to do. I think that's a little overzealous, but checking it quarterly isn't a bad idea. So you can go to annualcreditreport.com and you want to make sure that all of the addresses and telephone numbers are yours. Check the account balances and limits, particularly for those credit cards that you don't use often. If a criminal gets a hold of it and they have enough information, they can reach out to the credit card company, submit an address change, have a new card sent to them, ask for a credit limit, and then they can have a field day shopping on your dime. So it's important to look not only at the balances, but the limits that are on those accounts as well. And then make sure the accounts are actually yours. And if you find something that's not right, it's important that you report it to each of the 3 credit reporting bureaus. If you're doing it online, if you've pulled the credit report online, you can actually file a dispute right from that page. I had to do that once when there was an address and telephone number that weren't mine. There wasn't anything else that was inaccurate, but I was very concerned that someone was in the process of trying to steal my identity. So I was able to stop that pretty quickly. But another thing that we can do, and I think this is so incredibly important for every single person to do, if I had a magic wand, I'd wave it, and I would encourage everyone to freeze their credit. So when you freeze your credit, it stops a creditor from being able to access your credit report, preventing someone from opening a new account in your name. That's, again, as I mentioned, that's the number 3 form of identity theft, and you can stop it dead by freezing your credit. So unfortunately, you do have to go to all 3 credit reporting bureaus, but if you're interested, these are the links. Take a picture, take a screenshot, whatever it is, and go ahead and freeze your credit. It's pretty simple to do. The worst part of it is creating the login information and having to do it to all 3 bureaus. But it's easy to do. You register online with each of the bureaus. You log into the website. The 2-factor authentication is important. And then there's a little radio button, and you just click on it and say, freeze my credit. And then you log out, and you're done. That's going to stop somebody from opening a cell phone account, buying a house, starting a new credit card. All the things that we need to be aware of can be stopped dead. But it's important to know that you may have to lift the freeze, but it's easy to do too. You log into the website, you click the radio button that says lift my freeze. There's 2 options there. You can lift my freeze indefinitely, or you can lift the freeze for a defined amount of time. If, for instance, you're shopping for a new car and you think you're going to do that in about a week's time, you can actually set it so that that credit freeze goes back automatically on that defined date. So maybe you're shopping for a car and you think you'll get it in 2 weeks. Maybe you set it to go back on April 10th, and then you log out. Times when you might have to lift the freeze: shopping for new credit. If you are applying for a job where an employer wants to pull your credit, if you are shopping for homeowners, renters, or car insurance, or if you're moving from one rental to another. Those are all situations where someone may want to pull our credit, and we've authorized it, so it's okay for us to lift the freeze and let them get access to the credit report. It can impact your, having good credit can help your insurance rates to go down. If you have a higher credit risk, your insurance rates might go up. So keep in mind, protecting your identity can have a long-lasting effect on our lives in general. All right, so as we start to wrap up, I want to talk about what to do if it happens to you. Because so often I hear from consumers who say, Katrina, I was a victim, but I didn't really know what to do. And I called my police department and they weren't very much help. So I think it's important to provide the information. There are 6 steps that you need to take. The first one is to contact your local police department and file a report. If they tell you that there's nothing they can do, you need to make sure that they file a report and you get the report number, the report ID number, and keep track of that. Some police departments will give you a copy of the actual report. I think if you can get it, it's helpful to have. And then you want to make sure that you reach out to the company's fraud department, whether it's your credit card, your investment account, the cell phone account, maybe if someone's opened a cell phone. If they've opened new accounts, you want to make sure that you close them. However, if they've used your credit card without your permission, you want to cancel the card and not close the account. If you close the account, that can have a negative impact on your credit report because that's the history is a big part of our credit report. So if you close an account that you've had for 25 years, you're going to lose 25 years worth of credit history and your credit report can take a hit. Reporting it to all 3 credit reporting bureaus is really important so that they know to be on the lookout for that fraud alert in case someone has your personal information and tries to open those accounts. However, if you've frozen your credit reports, you don't necessarily have to worry that much about that, but it is a good idea to report it to all 3. They may tell you when you report to one that their computers communicate, but the truth is computers don't always do what they're supposed to do, and we're talking about your good credit. So I encourage everyone to report to all 3 on their own so that you make sure that it's done. You also want to report to the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office. They're the top law enforcement here in Pennsylvania, and they track frauds and scams. And they actually have created a way that sometimes they're able to reimburse consumers, especially seniors, who have lost money. I know in their first year they were able to return about $1.5 million. So that's very helpful. But if you don't report it, no one knows, and there's nothing that can be done about it. So you also want to report to the Federal Trade Commission at identitytheft.gov. If you're a victim of a fraud or scam, you can go to ftc.gov and file that information. And then finally, it's kind of important to take notes and keep a notebook. You want to make sure that you pay attention to, you write down the dates and times that you notified each of those, that you did each of those steps. Make sure you write down who you talked to and make notes about what you talked about. I have been doing this for a very long time, and I had a consumer one that I had worked with years prior who said, Katrina, I took your advice and I kept that notebook. And when my wife and I tried to apply for a car, initially my loan was declined because I had all this junk on my credit report from the identity theft. But I had my notebook and I was able to show it to the lender, and the lender eventually approved his loan. So having that notebook can go a really long way. Another way the notebook can be helpful is sometimes government agencies don't investigate until they have a certain number of complaints. The Postal Inspection Service was telling me that they were investigating a string of identity thefts that had taken place 5 years ago. Now, I don't remember what I did 5 weeks ago, sometimes 5 minutes ago. I surely don't remember what I did 5 years ago. So if I have the notebook, I have all the reports, I have everything that I did, that can go a really long way in helping law enforcement to catch the bad guys. So keep the notebook, do the steps. It will be great for you. It will help you to recover from the theft, and it can help law enforcement down the road. So how can we protect ourselves? Checking what's in your wallet. If you're not planning to shop at your favorite department store today, you don't need that card in your wallet. Only keep what you absolutely need to have, because if your wallet is stolen, it can be a challenge to figure out Which cards did I have? I have to cancel those. I have to get new ones. That can be a real challenge. Buying a crosscut or micro shredder is a great way to protect that information. One of my sweet friends always says, make confetti, not spaghetti, because there are computer programs that can take those long strips, scan them, and put them together again. So it's important that we remember to do that crosscut so that we can actually protect that information. We need to make sure we check our credit reports often, because that's where we're going to see the first signs of identity theft. You can opt out of solicitations. I wish we were in person. I would say, how many of you get those pre-approved credit card offers in the mail all the time? And I think a lot of us would raise our hands. You can actually go to optoutprescreen.com and you can fill out a paper and sign it and send it back, and you will stop getting those credit card offers in the mail. So that's a great tool. Make sure that you're on the do not call list, but remember that the do not call list is going to stop legitimate calls from reaching out. It's not going to stop your legislators from calling. It's not going to stop those types of calls when we get closer to the election. But it is going to stop the other calls. But keep in mind that criminals don't care. If they did, they'd follow the law and they wouldn't be criminals. So make sure that if you don't recognize the number, don't answer it. Legitimate calls will leave a message. And then finally, verify everything before you click on a link or open an attachment, or download any random phone applications that are on your cell phone device. Those are all really great ways to protect yourself so that you don't become a victim of identity theft or other types of fraud. I always like to provide more resources because we can always keep learning. You can reach out to my office, the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities, if you have any questions or concerns. You can call us at 800-PA-BANKS, and a real life person is going to answer the phone. You can reach out to the Attorney General at the 800 number that you see there, or their website, attorneygeneral.gov. There are some federal resources that are important for us to have. The Federal Trade Commission, ftc.gov/ID theft, or ftc.gov in general, and you can file a complaint. The Securities and Exchange Commission is a great resource if you think that you're being presented with a potential investment fraud. You can call them or go to investor.gov to learn more. And then if the fraud or scam involves the U.S. Postal Service, you can reach out to them at uspis.gov, and you can file a complaint there, or you can call the 877 number that you see on the screen. And finally, before we go to questions, Governor Shapiro believes it's very important for Pennsylvanians to be able to reach the agencies that they need without having to call a dozen different places and get frustrated. So you can reach out to if you have a complaint about insurance, one of the companies that we regulate, student loans, utilities, or your barber or other professional, you can actually reach out and call 866-PA-COMPLAINT, or you can go to pa.gov/consumer. Those resources will get you directly to the agency that you need to reach to file that complaint. That's a really great way to be able to get to the root of your issue by just going to one place rather than getting bounced around. So I think that's very helpful. Are there any questions in the chat? I'm not seeing any.
I don't see any either.
Yeah, feel free to hit the chat button and type something in, or you can also unmute yourself and ask away.
If we're going to have folks unmute themselves, we may want to stop the recording, just, so that people feel more comfortable with that.